Sorry for disappearing. I got depressed. But I think I'm back now. And that's because I'm a little less depressed. Now, what has kind of helped with my depression? Surprisingly, a lot of that credit goes towards the Absolute comic book line. The Absolute series, Absolute Superman, Absolute Batman, Absolute Green Arrow, they are exactly what I've been looking for in my media lately, especially my comics. I have not been this into modern day comics, maybe ever. So, that said, I'm reading the Absolute comics. They've got me reading Mainline Batman comics again, and it makes me wonder, who's stronger, Absolute Batman or Prime Batman? So let's figure it out together. To start off, I'm just going to try to refer to Absolute Batman as Absolute and as mainstream Batman as Prime Batman. Now, before I go too far into this, I want to address some things. The first thing I'm going to address is Absolute Batman's stats. He is supposedly 6'9" and 420 pounds. We see what you're going for here, Snyder. Personally, I believe these stats reflect him in his bat suit. I think the suit makes him taller, and I think the suit makes him quite a bit heavier. I'll make my case for that a little bit later. Now, I could be wrong on all this. This could be his stats outside of his suit.
You sure about that?
Okay, yes, Snyder confirms that these are his actual stats. But still, I feel like he did not lock that in until he saw the internet's reaction to those numbers. And this is why I feel that way. Let's go back to when we first see these stats. When he's being admitted into Arkham, it says that he's 6'9", 420 pounds, and that an orderly injured his back while moving him. Then it says that more people were injured after removing his suit. His suit that is hung up on chains, that is fully bulletproof, stopping rifle rounds. His very heavy suit. Personally, I think that Bruce is closer to 6'7". The suit adds an extra 2 inches, makes him a little bit taller. I do think he's heavier than 220 pounds. We see that was his weight during his mugshot, and I think that was very early before he really started to bulk up and become the big Batman that we see. But I don't think he's past the 200 range. I think he's probably maxing out closer to 280. I am okay with this just being my headcanon. Ignoring my headcanon, going with the official stats, just to help us visualize Batman. When we think of him, we can safely think of half Thor. They have very similar stats. He's a good visualization of this comic book character. No matter how we look at it, Absolute Batman is just way larger than Prime Batman. I just view this as the rule of cool. There is a chance the Omega particles in the Absolute universe have made Bruce genetically different, but I think it is more fun to imagine that in these comic book scenarios where training can give you superpowers, you can fight aliens and robots and gods by just practicing karate and working out really hard. Yeah, if you work out even harder, you can grow an extra 5 to 7 inches and put on 50 to 200 more pounds than what you might be in a different universe. It's just more fun that way. Spoilers for the most recent issues. It is possible that Joker maybe has tampered with the Wayne's genetics while trying to create this perfect enemy. I don't think that's the case. I actually think Absolute Harley is confirming that Joker didn't have any influence on Batman, but it is possible. We don't know which way these comics are going to go. The other elephant is that I'm assuming that all of these characters, both of these characters, are not using steroids. I think Absolute Batman is the version of Batman that is most likely to use steroids, but I still maintain the idea that he's completely natural. DC, Marvel, these comic book humans just have a higher peak than we have in real life. For the Prime universe, for sure, there's just random villains and minions that are way stronger than Batman. You look at people like Still, I did a video on him. They're just built different. So I don't think, or I'll say, if either of these characters were on steroids, they would be quite a bit stronger than what we see. He doesn't like to rely on things. He doesn't like to use things that he doesn't make himself. And yes, he could make his own steroids. Of course, he's very smart, very intelligent. But another thing is that he doesn't want his performance to be unreliable. And with steroids, there's times where Batman would be without them. He's in the desert, he's traveling, he's trapped in prisons for a long period of time. And his mood would fluctuate, his hormones would fluctuate, and his strength and performance would fluctuate. And even when he's taking the dosage, they're going to affect his mind. They're going to affect his attitude and his personality. And for him, the type of guy who will say no to a drug that will give him Kryptonian powers, with no downsides. Don't know why he says no to that, but he's that type of guy. He's gonna say no to steroids. He is. If Batman's taking steroids, Batman's taking this little pill that gives him superpowers. He didn't do that, he's not taking steroids. I also feel like the Batman Venom comic really addresses this very well. There is a time where he fails to save someone, and so he does take a very early version of Venom, and it affects his mind, it affects his attitude. He becomes addicted, and he's very clearly disgusted with the way he has to rely on this. I feel like that narrative goes completely out the window if he stops taking that drug just to move on to other drugs. Now, for Absolute Batman, he is different. He's a little bit more aggressive. He's a little less focused on longevity, but we can still say that he would not want his performance to fluctuate heavily, and he still fights with a level of self-control and discipline. And I don't believe that he would actually take anything that would influence the way he fights, maybe make him a little too aggressive. I also feel like if you look at his time in Arkham, he would be weaker, he would be smaller if he had been on steroids beforehand. Now you can argue and say that the surgeries, the procedures they did on him while he was in there maybe enhanced him to make up for the lack of his own steroids. That's fine, I don't agree with that, but that is a solid read of the situation. Because I believe the narrative of Batman and definitely the Absolute Universe is not compatible with steroid usage. A lot of what we're seeing, it's a story about not selling out, not giving up who you are just to be stronger or just to be better, resisting the corrupting influence that is Darkseid. You can make an argument that perhaps Absolute Batman is on something. I don't think that works for the story, so the rest of the video will continue as if he is not on steroids. Now, let's get into it. Prime Batman is incredibly strong. He's got the knowledge and specifically resources to get as strong as possible, as strong and as big as he wants to be. If I had a butler who could cook for me, my nutrition would be on point. Alfred can handle all of Bruce's dietary needs. On top of this, Prime Batman is lonelier than Absolute Batman. And the way this factors in is that he's not being invited to the movies and then going to grab pizza or tacos or something afterwards. Those are small little blips that can mess up a person's diet, and Prime Batman doesn't have to say no to those. He doesn't have to do those things. He's got a more strict diet. Prime has also traveled the world. This has allowed him to see many different training styles, and he can take and pick and choose the best parts from each system that he sees. And then of course, he is a genius who has studied the human body. He's great at biology. He knows how things work in the body and how they react to training. This is a point towards Prime. While Absolute Batman is also a genius, he also has access to the internet, so he really does have everything he needs to know about physical development, strength training, muscle building. He has access to all that knowledge, but he does lack the resources to train as extensively as Prime Batman. In my opinion, this is kind of negligible, actually. You can become incredibly strong and incredibly big with simple calisthenics and barbell exercises. After that, you just need knowledge to know how to train with your limited resources, and as I said, Absolute Batman has that knowledge. No, the biggest problem is actually going to be Absolute Batman has to prepare his own meals. He has to cook on top of training, on top of working, and on top of being Batman. He is running into the issue that most of us in real life run into, where it's just hard to sit down and cook and fit that in on top of everything else. This is not an impossible issue. We all deal with it. There are plenty of bodybuilders or powerlifters who work normal jobs who cook for themselves by just meal prepping, and that makes it easier for them to handle. But we still have to admit that Prime has the advantage here. This is going to equalize over their careers. Prime Bruce probably did not have the best diet when he was out training and gathering skills to become Batman. But when he got back to Gotham, his diet was absolutely perfect. So Absolute Batman will maybe have more time to have a good diet, but he's always going to have to prepare his meals himself. We can think of Prime's diet as having drastic lows and drastic highs, but the highs are so high that they actually balance out those lows and lead to a better diet. While Absolute Batman has fewer lows, fewer highs, but just because of his resources and because of his time, it leads to a more average diet. I have no evidence for this. This is just me trying to logic out how this might work. Maybe Absolute Batman just loves cooking and it's no issue and he's able to do it very quickly, but I don't think that's the case. So we're giving a point to Prime here. The biggest knock on their ability to train is going to be their sleep and their recovery. They are always operating with less sleep than optimal, and they are really training around crazy combat injuries. They're getting stabbed, shot. They're not just tweaking a joint or a muscle here. They are dealing with some serious injuries, and yet they are still training in a way that allows them to maintain a lot of strength and a lot of size. And for Prime, he's of course fighting people all the time, but he's doing a lot of traveling and a lot of studying on top of that. And he typically patrols at night. I can attest to this right now. This is what I'm dealing with. Being up most nights out of the week is horribly detrimental to your ability to train and recover. It's horrible. Realistically, with the way Batman sleeps, Prime Batman, and it's not happening. He's not training like that. He's not going to maintain his strength and his muscle mass. Sleeping during the day is just not the same. And when he is back in Gotham and he is doing CEO stuff, charities, he's sleeping even less during the day. So he's getting lower quality sleep and he's getting less of it than he should. It's just a complete train wreck. For Absolute Batman, I think we can actually say he sleeps better than Prime Batman. Up until he actually becomes Batman, when he's training, when he's gathering skills, when he's playing football, he's probably sleeping pretty normally actually. And this may be the actual answer as to why he's bigger than Prime Batman. He ended up getting more sleep, so he got more stage 3. And when you are in stage 3, which is dominant when you are younger, and it kind of goes downhill as you get older, you get more human growth hormone, an actual steroid that is released by your body. In this video, I talk about how sleep deprivation, it really just messes up your ability to grow and to recover. There are not very many hacks you can go through to try to balance out a poor sleep schedule. You just really got to sleep more. So if you want to get as big as Absolute Batman, you need to watch this video. But once Absolute Bruce becomes Batman, he's pretty much on the same schedule as Prime Bruce. And actually, because he has a real day job, we could say that he's in a worse situation. Both of these jobs, the CEO and being a civil engineer, in the comics, they're not working anywhere near as hard as they would be in real life. And yeah, CEOs don't really do anything in real life for most companies. But Bruce is actively involved in Wayne Enterprises. He is trying to put in some effort to make sure the company is not as harmful as it could be. And he also does a lot of charity stuff, so he is doing a lot of daytime activities. Absolute Batman has it worse. Theoretically, he has to work a 9 to 5. Now, he is capable of disappearing for months at a time. When he was in Arkham, he wasn't working. His boss was just like, hey, it's okay, here's your job back. So he's obviously not beholden to the same time requirements we are for our real life jobs. So even though when he's Batman, Absolute Bruce has more responsibilities and probably is sleeping worse, I'm going to actually give this to him because he got more sleep when it really, really mattered, when he was younger, when he was growing, than Prime Bruce did. And I even think as Batman, it kind of looks like Absolute Batman does not patrol quite so much. It seems like he does very targeted surgical missions. I think Prime Batman is basically just running around rooftops all night, where, on the other hand, Absolute Batman may not operate every single night. It seems like he might only pop up when he knows something is going down with the party animals at first. Therefore, he might sleep a little bit more to balance out. So overall, I do give this to Absolute Batman. Things equal out later, but early on, I think he got more sleep when it really mattered. Next, the fun part. Over the years, we've seen Prime work out all the time. Like, we have so many examples of him lifting weights, of him training, doing gymnastics. It's awesome. Tons of material. What really stood out to me is in Batman Venom, after he failed to save a girl who was drowning, he really obsessed over trying to lift this boulder. He would practice with barbells and get it up to the same weight, about 600 pounds, and he would try to lift that. What I noticed about this is that the discussions around these panels typically frame it as if he is deadlifting and he's failing to deadlift 600 pounds. Which doesn't make a lot of sense. Like I've been saying, DC characters are stronger than us, stronger than normal humans. And there are people who can pretty easily deadlift 600 pounds. Batman should have no problem with that. And he doesn't, because when we have more context, we see that he's not trying to deadlift that. He's trying to power snatch it. And when I looked, I saw that the world record for power snatching is like 478 pounds. So yeah, 600 pound power snatch is kind of crazy. That fits more into that DC comic book human level of strength. But he failed that. He wasn't strong enough to do it. Now, on the things that he can do, we see him bench pressing 1,000 pounds. 500 on this side, more than likely 500 on the other side. In this panel, almost makes it look like he's bench pressing 405 pounds. I think if we use both of these panels to contextualize each other, he may actually be JM pressing. He may not be bench pressing in this panel. A JM press is a tricep focused exercise that transfers very well to bench pressing. The setup is kind of weird for bench pressing in general anyway, so I say he's doing something else. He's JM pressing. And if we think that his triceps are able to move 405 pounds, and that when he adds in the majority of his chest and his delts, he's able to move 1,000 pounds, yeah, things make sense. I like the picture that paints. Flipping over to Absolute Batman, how do you give us the biggest,
I'm the biggest, the largest
version of Batman, and then give us 2 training scenes? Like, I'm starving here. I need that testosterone boost from seeing him lift heavy weights. They don't even show the weights in the panels. I have to guess. I have to assume here. So all I can gather is that Absolute Batman incline bench presses and that he does leg extensions. I believe that Absolute Batman is pushing more weight than Prime Batman. But for now, we're going to give this to both of them. All I can say is they both work out. So let's just give both a point. So now let's look at how they fight. Both of them are incredibly destructive in how they fight. Both of them routinely destroy concrete structures, normally by throwing people through them. If they don't throw people all the way through them, they definitely crack them. Even though Prime has many examples of throwing people around, he is mostly using technique, some type of judo, some type of martial art technique. Now, that's not to say he doesn't manhandle people. He does just throw people sometimes, but he does use a lot of technique. And when it comes to strength, it's not the same thing. Absolute Batman takes this without a doubt. Absolute does use grappling techniques, yes. But when you look at the way he fights, he really is truly just manhandling people. He's picking them up and he's throwing them. And what's interesting here is he's doing it with his cape. He's doing it at a distance. And I'm not going to get into the physics of it, but all you need to know is it is drastically harder to move a weight that is further away from you. Try it for yourself. Pick up a dumbbell, hold it close to your chest, and then hold it all the way out. It's harder to hold it all the way out. That principle is very vital to training calisthenics. If you don't have access to a lot of equipment and you want to make exercises harder, you need to be able to manipulate the leverages to make them harder just by creating distance. So that is what's happening when Absolute Batman is fighting and throwing people with his cape. And he's doing it over and over and over again throughout his fights. Prime has impressive feats. He destroys robots, he kicks motorcycles in half, he's incredibly strong. But Absolute Batman just takes this. These power moves are standard for him. Now, I think it's worth looking at how they move. Both of them are incredibly athletic people. Prime is a little bit more of an acrobat than Absolute Batman. And I don't think that's because Absolute lacks the skill or the body awareness, but I do think the size comes into play here. We see Prime jump around often enough. Even in his training, he incorporates a good amount of gymnastics. He's not as much of a gymnast or an acrobat as Dick Grayson, but he is a solid acrobat. We don't really see those moves from Absolute Batman. We see him lift himself off the ground with his cape a lot. And what I do find interesting about this move is it looks a lot like a support hold. I think of a ring support hold because it's a little bit more unstable. I think the cape probably replicates that pretty well. But you can think of the top position of a normal dip. They're both support holds. And if you think of Batman's 420 pounds body weight, then this is pretty impressive. I am actually leaning towards giving this to Absolute Batman because he does jump and move as if he's lighter than what he is. And that shows that he's got the power and the strength to completely control his body weight. But I really do think both Bats deserve a point here. Just because Prime moves differently doesn't mean that strength isn't required. There are scenes where he jumps very high, he jumps very far in ways that require a lot of power, even though he is lighter than Absolute Batman. And as a negative, yes, Absolute is moving athletically, but he's not doing it quite as acrobatically or quite as often as Prime Batman. So, points for both just because they are controlling their body weight extremely well, which takes a lot of strength. There is an honorable mention here. When both Bats were under the influence of Venom, they became stronger. When Prime was under the influence, he went from failing a 600-pound power snatch to succeeding. He threw people around, he fought differently, he was a lot stronger. But I don't know if that really compares, because when Absolute Batman was on Venom, he knocked down a Ferris wheel. It's a different level of strength, but the Venom was different. So this is why it's an honorable mention. No one's getting any points. The substances that they took were too different to compare. So I am going to say that Absolute Batman is stronger than Prime Batman, but it's only 1 point of difference here, especially when you equalize ages. When I've been talking about Prime Bruce, I've mostly been thinking about where he is right now in comics. The Chip, don't know how to say his last name, but the stories written by Chip, the stories that we're getting now with the Fraction storyline, that's what I'm thinking of when I talk about Prime Bruce. If you compare them at the same ages, which we will do in a second, I do think the difference in strength is a little bit more drastic. Alright, so to clarify this next part, the timeline, I'm going to refer to the Year 1 comic, but I'm contextualizing it with the comic The Night and 0 Year. If you look at comics like The Night or 0 Year, that version of Bruce outperforms the Bruce that we see in Year 1. But since Year 1 is canon and works so well as an origin to Batman's career, I think it's more fun to just kind of up the Year 1 power level to equalize and to match what we see in those other comics. So that just explains how I'm looking at this. When I look at issue 4 of Absolute Batman, in my opinion, Absolute Batman was drastically behind Year 1. He was probably heavier, but I don't think he was stronger, and I don't think he was more skilled. And I think this is closer to that 6'7", 220 pound stat that we see. Once he has his epiphany, he starts training differently, and I think he starts to put that extra muscle mass to good use. At this point, I would say that he is equal to Year 1 Batman in strength, but still not as skilled as him. But this is when we see him getting bigger. The panels that pop up are showing him gaining muscle mass. Once we get to the annual, when the Batmobile is introduced, we're looking at an Absolute Batman that is stronger than the Prime version at the same age. He has definitely surpassed Prime in strength, and he's getting pretty close, if not better, in skill. And I'll get back to that in a second. But first, I want to also throw out, it really irritates me that some people think Batman was killing people in the annual. This was obviously very stylized. It was a little cathartic considering what we're going through right now. And I think if you want Batman to kill, go read a Punisher comic. I will be interested to see if Snyder pushes that in a different way. We'll see what happens. But look at the timeline here. If Batman was killing these KKK members, whatever, if Batman was killing these people, then he would have shot the person in issue 4. And the fact that he is smaller and then he gets bigger for the annual shows that the annual takes place after issue 4. There's a timeline here. He considers killing in issue 4. He decides not to. Why would he kill in the annual? Obviously, he was angrier at the situation. Again, it's cathartic. But no, he wasn't killing. Timeline makes no sense to not kill, and then stop killing. It's dumb. But the reason I say that he's getting very close to the Year 1 skill level is because he is fighting quite a bit more people than Year 1 is. He's dealing with mob fights. I think he had to adapt. He had to grow in skill faster. And skill, it is martial arts skill, it is tactical thinking, it's anything that's not strength is what I'm saying. So yeah, is he better at martial arts than Year 1? Probably not at any point. Year 1 was trained by Ra's al Ghul with the way modern comics are right now. But was Year 1 thinking as tactically as Absolute has to? Maybe not. So I think the skill is starting to get closer at this point in time. At no point in time, with an equalized setting, do I think Absolute Batman beats Prime Batman. Even though I do believe Absolute Batman is physically stronger than Prime Batman, that just turns into a situation where Prime is fighting a weaker, maybe more tactical version of Prime Bane, and Prime is taking that every day. It won't be easy necessarily, but I do think he would win. And I think if we allow for the gadgets and the tech, Prime Batman is just so drastically far ahead of Absolute because of his money. I don't think it's a competition here. So why is Absolute Batman stronger than Prime Batman? It looks like Absolute Batman only was trained in Gotham. He got his training in different gyms and probably in different careers from what we're seeing. Prime Batman, especially modern day, got his training from Ra's al Ghul. He trained across the world. He worked with the Tibetan monks that we all know about. He just had more access to more teachers and more training techniques. This is going to put him on a completely different level skill-wise. But because he spent all this time acquiring all of these skills, he had less time and less need to get as strong and as big as possible. Prime inherently understood that he would have more skill and he wouldn't need all of the strength and all the muscle mass. Absolute did not have these resources. He needed the extra strength to make up for the lack of skill. And I think also with comics, it seems like strength and muscle kind of equals durability. I think he needed the extra muscle to take the hits that he's taken. Since he has less resources, he can only go so far in that way, so he needs to go further in a different way. Another thing to think about is that Prime has great materials to make his bat suit. A lot of times his bat suits are bulletproof, but he's a billionaire. They're probably made of fancy, lightweight materials. It doesn't look like Absolute Batman has those resources, but he still has a bulletproof suit. So I think it makes sense to just kind of say the suit is heavier. If he's going to move around and fight and move like Batman while wearing a heavier suit, he's got to be bigger, he's got to be stronger. And he can't sacrifice that protection because he's fighting people and monsters like this, and guns are everywhere, so he needs as much protection as he can get. So I think we can also say that his suit is heavier. He needed to be stronger to carry the suit around. So to summarize, how did he get bigger? What did he do differently? Absolute Batman got more sleep when he was younger. He got more stage 3, so he got more human growth hormone in his sleep. He worked out more because he wasn't able to travel. He wasn't able to gather a bunch of skills. And because he has a blue-collar job, he probably works out while he's working. He's lifting heavy bags. These things weigh at least 60 pounds. They can go heavier than that, I think. He's got a few in his hand. Like, he's just training all the time. So that's it for this video. I am pretty sure I'm back. I don't have a timeline for my next video. I will say I got a lot of work done on the Goku video before the depression kicked in. So that will probably be out soon. But I actually have an idea for a couple of different types of videos. One is a pretty big pivot. It's not replacing anything if I even go in that direction. But the other is a tier list. I don't really like tier lists, but I have a fun idea related to this topic. Hopefully there'll be more videos out soon. Thank you for watching this one.